People think resilience means being strong, pushing through, not letting things get to you, but that's not resilience, that's suppression, and suppression doesn't hold. Because life will test you, things will go wrong, plans will fall apart, people will let you down. And at some point, no matter how strong you try to be, something will hit you harder than expected. So the question isn't how do you avoid that, it's how do you respond when it happens. Because the difference between people who break and people who adapt isn't toughness, it's skill. Resilience isn't something you're born with. It's not a personality trait that some people have and others don't. It's a psychological skill. And like any skill, it can be trained. The first step towards becoming more resilient is changing how you interpret what happens to you. Because your thoughts don't just describe reality, they shape it. Two people can go through the exact same situation and walk away with completely different experiences. One sees it as overwhelming, unfair, proof that things are going wrong. The other sees it as difficult but manageable, something to deal with rather than something to collapse under. The situation hasn't changed. Only the interpretation has, and that interpretation determines how much it affects you. Most people treat their thoughts as facts. Whatever their mind tells them, they believe it. But your brain is not objective. It's designed to detect threat, to anticipate problems, to keep you safe. And it often does that by exaggerating how bad things are or how badly they might go. Resilient people don't automatically believe those thoughts. They step back from them. They question them. They look at the situation from a slightly different angle and ask themselves whether what they're thinking is actually accurate or just their brain trying to protect them in an unhelpful way. And that small shift, that ability to take a step back instead of getting pulled in, changes everything. Because when your thoughts become more balanced, the situation becomes more manageable. And when the situation feels more manageable, you're far less likely to be overwhelmed by it. The second step towards psychological resilience is understanding that you're not supposed to deal with everything on your own. There's this idea that strong, resilient people handle everything independently. They keep it to themselves. They push through in silence. But that's not resilience, that's isolation. And isolation makes things heavier than they need to be. When you keep everything in your head, it becomes louder, more chaotic, more difficult to organize. Problems feel bigger because they're contained entirely within your own perspective. But the moment you say something out loud, even if nothing about the situation changes, it often starts to feel different, clearer, more structured, less overwhelming. Resilient people don't avoid support, they use it. They know when something is too much to carry alone, and they're willing to share it with someone they trust. Not because they can't cope, but because they understand that coping doesn't have to mean doing everything by yourself. And that willingness to reach out, to let someone else in, is often what stops things from escalating in the first place. The third step in developing resilience is knowing where to place your attention when things go wrong. Because when something difficult happens, your brain immediately starts scanning for everything that's out of your control. What if this gets worse? What if this doesn't work out? What if I can't fix this? And the more attention you give to those thoughts, the more stuck you feel. Resilient people shift their focus. Instead of asking, what if everything goes wrong? They ask, what can I actually do here? They separate what's in their control from what isn't, and then they act on what is. Sometimes that means solving the problem directly. Sometimes it means taking small steps to improve the situation. And sometimes it simply means accepting that certain parts of it can't be changed and choosing how they respond instead. The final step in growing psychological resilience is building evidence that you can handle difficult things. Because at the core of resilience is belief, not blind confidence, but evidence-based belief. If you consistently avoid challenge, your brain learns something very specific. It learns that you can't handle things. That difficulty is something to escape from. That pressure is something to avoid. And over time, that becomes your identity. But the opposite is also true. Every time you do something difficult, every time you push yourself slightly outside of what feels comfortable, every time you follow through on something that would have been easier to avoid, you create evidence. Evidence that you can cope. Evidence that you can adapt. Evidence that you can handle more than you think. And that evidence builds self-belief. Not all at once, but gradually. Resilient people don't wake up one day feeling unshakable. They build it by consistently doing things that challenge them, by developing skills, by improving in areas that matter to them, by proving to themselves over and over again that they are capable. And over time, that shifts their mindset from "I can't deal with this" to "I'll figure this out." That's what resilience actually looks like. Not the absence of difficulty, not the absence of emotion, but the ability to face things, adapt to them, and recover from them. So if you want to become more resilient, don't focus on being tougher. Focus on taking these steps. Learn to step back from your thoughts instead of getting pulled into them. Learn to let other people support you instead of carrying everything alone. Learn to focus on what you can control instead of what you can't. And most importantly, build evidence that you can handle difficult things. Because resilience isn't something you either have or you don't. It's something you practice. And the more you practice it, the more unshakable you become.